So much for having me. Thank you so much for having me join, because I'm not native to ECC. I'm actually at Oakton Community College. I've been there part-time for about 10 years, and I'm full-time there right now. Well, thank you so much for being gracious to extend this invitation to me. So we're going to get started. The title of our presentation is Blackness is Not Monolithic, Black Immigrant Women Scholars Enacting Change Through Storytelling. And so I'm from Nigeria, and I've lived in the United States for almost 20 years, or 22 years, 22 years now, going 22 years. And I consider myself Nigerian American.
And hi, as I said, I'm Melissa. I was born and raised in England, but my parents are from Ghana, West Africa. I have actually lived here for 10.5 years. I consider myself Ghanaian British. I've actually had someone tell me I must be African American, and I was like, I don't think it works like that. But so I say I'm Ghanaian British or Black British. And this is the introduction that we typically have to do whenever we step inside of a classroom or introduce ourselves for the first time. We've come to the realization that it's imperative to share our stories as part of our teaching praxis or pedagogy. It is also to disrupt the single stories around Blackness and Black womanhood. And with that being said, we would like you to take this quick, very low stakes quiz. We know how we all feel about that as educators, to test your Black immigrant knowledge and knowledge of Africa writ large. So we didn't know how we would be sharing this. So we had a link, but we also have a pin for Kahoot. Yay, Kahoots. So if you can log in to kahoot.it, hopefully this pin actually works. We've given you a random nickname because I find those really, it's mostly just for my amusement, to be honest. So I see some of you have already logged in. We've got Silly Dia, Honest Penguin, Genius Cat. So please make note of your nicknames. Genius Dragon. Oh, I like the sound of that one. I don't know how many people are going to be doing this, so we'll give it a couple of more minutes. So you go to kahoot.it. So what I'll need you to do, I'll have to share my screen as well. Hold on, how will I do this? Give me 1 minute.
Want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, but I need to figure it out on my end. Give me 1 minute. Sorry, as I said, I have to log in on my end. Okay. Everyone can see the game on their end, right? So what I'm going to have you do actually, Bissy, is you also log in and play the game.
Yes,
so can
I'm into. I just can't remember what my name is.
Okay. Everyone is in? Right, I'm going to click start, but you can't see it. That's the only problem. All right. Is that everybody?
Yeah, I think we should go. Yeah.
Sorry, as I said, I've got issues with my screen today, my Zoom. Okay.
By chance, do we need to refresh our page as users on the back end? Because I'm seeing the same thing that Professor Tarver is seeing, that it's purple screen. Yep, same thing as Chuck and Kathleen.
What's happening, sorry?
Do we need to, by chance as users, do we need to refresh our page in order to see what you're seeing?
No, it's just that my Zoom on my my actual laptop's not working, and so it's not connected to my phone right now. So I'm seeing something different.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
If you
Okay.
have the link, you could maybe text to whoever is co-host and they could share the screen and then everyone could see what you see.
Give me 1 minute, hold on. Okay, give me 1 second. Copy.
Technology is good until
Right.
it's not.
Okay, Bissy, I'm about to text it to you
All right.
if it lets me. No, it's not letting me. Great. Sorry, people, give me 1 second.
Because you have the, I'm sorry, because you have the Kahoot, this is the screen, the same screen everybody's seeing is what I see.
Yeah, I can see it, but everyone else can't see what I'm seeing.
And if you want us to just move on and skip this.
Wait, let me see. Let's
Or
see what
perhaps in the chat.
I can't do it. Wait,
Mine
let's see.
says quiz now, and so it's loading.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. How many countries are there in Africa? Listen. Okay, so majority of you actually got that correct. All right, all right. So there are actually 54 countries in Africa. Woohoo! One of our pet peeves, the reason why we had this question is because what we notice is people say, I'm going to Africa. And I'm like, well, which part? Because they talk about Africa as though it's a one country. And it's like, no, it's a continent and there's actually 54 countries there. Okay, so Honest Penguin is in the lead. Okay, let's keep it going. What percentage of all the land on planet Earth does Africa cover? Is it 10%, 25%, 20%, or 35%? Missy, you were on it. Where's it gone?
Oh yeah, because I wanted to play and I didn't want my responses to influence.
Oh, okay.
So that was it. And then for those people just coming in.
Sure. So it covers 20%. All right, it covers 20%, which is quite a fair amount. All right. So Genius Cat is now taking the lead. Who's Genius Cat? How many
It was
languages?
a lucky guess, but my father would be proud. He was a geographer.
Oh, that's nice.
How many languages are spoken across Africa? It's approximately 2,000. So we've got some who thought it was 3,000 and some thought it was 1,000, approximately. A reason why this question came up was because someone actually asked me to speak African. And I was like, you don't know what that means because there's 2,000 languages. Mm-hmm. Honest Penguin's back in the lead. How many countries in Africa speak English as their national language? Okay, let's see. It's actually 24 countries out of the 54. We know it's due to colonization and the rest speak Italian, French, German, Portuguese, yes. Thank you. Legend Bunny has crept up the scoreboard. All right, last 3 questions. Along with lions, elephants, giraffes, Africa is also home to penguins. Is this true or false? It's actually true. And this question arose because a lot of the times people literally ask me, oh, do you have lions in your garden? Like the typical animals that you'd see in the Sahara and the desert and whatnot, well, in what they typically thought in the jungle. And we're like, well, let's surprise you. You'd also see penguins. So yes. As of 2016, how many Black immigrants are there in the US? There are 4 million Black immigrants in the US right now. Most of them are from West Africa, Nigeria and Ghana, namely. So me and Bissy are representing. They're mostly West Africa. And the final question is, as of 2016, the Black population in the US is made up, oh, I may have given this, is made up of what percentage of Black immigrants? Okay, I didn't. Whew. Felt the pressure. %. Okay, so some of you thought it was 50, and then we had 20 and 5. So 10% is not a huge amount. So we're going to see the winners. Drum roll, please. I'm very dramatic. Okay, let's see. Third place, we have Noble Shark, got 3 out of 7. Another 3 out of 7. Honest Penguin, and then another 3 out of 7. Must be down to a timing thing. Legend Bunny. Who is Legend Bunny? Speak forth. Legend Bunny. Victoria, well done. You are Legend Bunny. Well done. And then Honest Penguin and Noble Shark. I don't know who Honest Penguin was and Noble Shark, but well done. So we basically wanted to see how everyone was in regards to their Black immigrant knowledge and see if you have any questions. Was that all guessing? Was that something that you had exposure to? What surprised you? Okay, so Professor Tava said that she guessed the most. Anyone want to actually speak? Like, this is meant to be also interactive. We don't want to just talk at you.
I'll just say I'm in my office, so that's why I'm being quiet. But I am Honest Penguin, so.
Oh, well done, Honest Penguin.
Thank you.
And
I'm also with back in the office space, so but I was Legend Bunny, and I just really enjoy watching documentaries, so I've filled my head with all sorts of random facts, especially about the penguins.
okay, so you want
animals.
I'll admit the only one I authentically knew the answer to was the penguins.
okay. Did anyone have any questions for us? Did anything surprise you?
This is Tyler. For me, I mean, a lot of the questions, my guesses were, I would say, even uneducated guesses, I'm sorry to say. Because even I think the number of languages, I think, is the one that caught me off most guard, in the sense that that's not at all what I expected in terms of just the huge size, huge numbers.
It is.
Yeah, this is Elizabeth. I would just say that I didn't know the exact answer to any of them, but I was aware, you know, the basis for most of the questions, that, you know, Africa is filled with many countries, many languages, but I didn't have the exact, and I did not know about the penguins, and I missed where are there penguins, or are they in many, many countries?
I actually don't know exactly what countries they're. We ourselves, So all of these questions birthed from basically the questions and the stereotypes that had been hedged our way, that we were like, okay, we're typing up, we're gonna figure out these things, because we're so upset with things that have been said towards us. And so that's essentially where all the questions were birthed from. And we actually knew the answer to the Penguins one at one point, and then we forgot, because we were just like, there's so many stereotypes that we were just like overwhelmed at a certain point. Like the Speak African one, like me, because in Ghana alone, where I come from, thank you, very south of Africa, the Speak African alone, like in Ghana, there's like over 300 languages. And so I was like, Speak African, in my country alone, there's over 300 languages. What are you talking about?
Sure.
And
Well,
And in Nigeria, there are a lot more.
exactly.
and I think my other comment about the penguins and you not knowing is I couldn't tell you across my continent where every animal lives. So
Of course.
I just asked, but there's certainly no
that's
reason
fine.
either one of you should know any more than I would know every animal, or where it's located in what part of this, North America. So
That is just the fact that we've been asked so many times, do lions live in your garden?
Right.
Like, do you have a pet lion? I'm like, do you have a pet shark? No. So
It was the questions though, this is Latasha behind. I enjoyed the questions. I was not surprised by the languages because I studied abroad in South Africa, and they offered us a scholarship if we study the African language. So I studied Xhosa and learned part of the language when I was there. And it was the most difficult thing I've ever done to learn in an African language class, which is not near a European language class. It was very difficult to learn the language, but I had a tutor and I was able to learn. But when I was there, I traveled to Johannesburg, and I was amazed to see that young children spoke 4, 5, and 6 languages in Soweto. So it was amazing to see the number of languages that are spoken there. And then the other thing, when you talk about the lions and tigers, that made me laugh, because while I was there, that's the kind of questions my family would ask. Are there like lions and tigers? I'm like, no. They think it doesn't get cold in Africa. It does in Cape Town in South Africa, where I was at UCT. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, we have to wear a coat and have a space heater. Like, it was things like that people just didn't know. Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Oh, yeah, Chuck, you had your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can.
I've had some students from Africa, and most of them are multilingual. Some of them speak, French, English, and their parents' family language and the neighborhood language from like a village far away. And I tell them, what are you speaking with your children? And some of them say, English. My child doesn't, understand the language anymore. So I tell them, speak the language with your children, because maybe one day you'll go back and they'll need to speak that language when you visit family. And I tell them, make a cartoon or something on YouTube and just translate it. But anyways, it's a lot of work. And I was just wondering, like, in Africa, let's say that student from Ghana that speaks, 3 to 4 languages, is English or French or whatever, is it like wiping away the native languages there? In other words, I'm worried about like here and then, but what's happening there? Are the languages remaining, or are they melting away? And
And that's a good question. I can address that from the Nigerian perspective. Both Ghana and Nigeria, of course, we have English as a lingua franca because we're colonized by the British. So the English language is the language of education, is the language of commerce, of government. It's, all of that, and so just being educated, going to school, you learn English. And that's why a lot of us from Ghana, from Nigeria, we speak English like formal English, because that's where we learn formal English in school. And I always tell my students, it makes it easy for me as an English instructor or as a composition instructor to speak that formal English, because that's all I know to speak. I don't speak colloquial I'm not that easy. It doesn't come that easily to me. That being said, though, people still have, for example, I speak Yoruba. My native language is Yoruba, and I speak that. And people still speak Yoruba, especially when you look at the pop music scene, when you look at Nollywood, people, and then the market woman, people that you interact with, they still speak my native language. However, the younger generation of people, because, and it's still part of neocolonialism, right? Because at a point, people felt like, I need to speak English to my child so my child doesn't struggle in school. And I remember when I was in school, I was in a boarding school, and it was a no native language kind of situation. It's like, speak English. You have to speak English, and we will get punished if we spoke a language, punished as in just because, and the mentality then, I mean, I have the 2020 hindsight now, even though it's wrong, but the mentality was we needed to learn to speak English, so that we can compete favorably in the world as it is. But then it didn't, fortunately for me or for my generation, it didn't necessarily wipe out my language, because I still spoke my language in my home with the other people in my life, right? But younger parents, younger generation parents, at a point started to speak only English to their children at home, so that they don't struggle in school. And so we have that little, that population of people, they understand their language. Even back in Nigeria, they just don't speak it, or they are not fluent, or they don't know how to read or write. I read and I write in my native language, but this generation, they don't have that. But the reawakening, though, that is going on is that people, kids, I mean, millennials, people they are beginning to see the advantage of speaking their language. And like I said, in the pop culture, right? Like they still listen to, because Nigerian music, for example, is very popular with, even here in the United States, with this generation, the younger generation of people, Generation X and the millennials and all. And so they still connect to the the various native languages because of popular music and video and so on. And then we have also different situations where classes are popping up online because people want to learn the language. I have a friend whose husband was born here in the United States. Mom is German and dad is Nigerian, and he doesn't speak Yoruba, and he's in his 40s. And so every Saturday now he goes to a Yoruba class online just because he wants to learn the language. And so there's that reawakening. But yes, you're right. There's some attrition there, but it's still not as like totally wiped out. Sorry, that was long-winded, but.
And then sorry, go on.
Thank you. I love linguistics. That's what I was asking.
And I'll be quick, but in Ghana, they were doing a movement towards going back to your home language, more so your neighborhood language, or your tribal language within the curriculum, as well as simultaneously English, but English taking a backseat. And the governor of education was pushing for that, and she had a lot of pushback, basically everyone, because about globalization, right? Being in the global market and being able to compete globally, which I have mixed feelings about that, because colonization, but also, yes, realistically, we do need to compete in this world, but also what about your own identity? So it got a lot of pushback, but I think they tried to move forward with that and have their own, tribal languages instilled in the curriculum, because they were worried about language death. Because language death is a cultural aspect and it also speaks to your identity. Mm-hmm. So Ghana was pushing for that in the curriculum, and I don't know where they've landed. That was a couple of years ago. So we'll see.
Right. So thank you so much for the participation. But we just want to point out that just knowing the fact, to go back to what we're talking about generally, about little tidbits of knowledge about Africa generally, and the specifics of each country. You know, knowing the fact about Black immigrants, for us specifically about Africa, we found this that wanting to be known is on a nuanced level. As Black immigrant scholars and college professors, we understand, we see, we are aware of that narrowness, you know, of the stories of Blackness and Black womanhood, just like Ngozi Adichie said. And we feel compelled as educators to make space for what this means for us in a US-based classroom context. We feel that we urgently need to explore the intersectionality of our identities in the classroom so that, one, we can expand our students' knowledge and experience and their literacy practices. But most importantly, too, we want to carve a space for ourselves in the world of academia where stories like ours are non-existent, or maybe they are muted. And we ask our students to move past what they think they already know about Blackness so that they can encompass a much broader critical tapestry of identity, you know, to identify those new vistas and new territories. And that is what we believe that can enrich their learning experiences.
So being British, Ghanaian, and Nigerian respectively, we both observe two things with our students. They're often confounded by the intersectionality of our Black identities, which essentially doesn't align with the ideologies of Blackness. Essentially, they're like, wait, but you're British, but you're Black. How does that doesn't make any sense? You don't sit in like the palace with the Queen drinking tea and biscuits. No, I don't. In order to make space for ourselves, there is the necessity to invite them into conversations around our lived experiences then. Not to exclude them and be bitter and upset about it, but to include them in that conversation and to educate and discuss and open up. Well, bust that conversation wide open, essentially. And so in order to do that, we use our storytelling to eschew the concept of single stories of Blackness and Black womanhood, and to also challenge students to think about the African diaspora more broadly. And so this is where we would like to tell you a bit about our stories. I began my journey as an English teacher in England. Sorry. I taught at a school in industrialized Dover, Kent, where 95% of my students were white. I was the only Black teacher, female teacher, and there was one Black male teacher. And there was one fine day, wonderful fine day, where I had a student out of the blue who basically, I said, oh, I might go to Kenya to teach. And he said, well, oh, that would be great because you're just a monkey, aren't you? And you belong in a zoo. And I was like, points for inference, because he's thinking about the safari in Kenya. But also I was like, hold up. Like, you know, when you're just beyond shocked, just your heart sinks because I got along well with those students that I was just, my heart was broken a little bit. I just was shocked because obviously he also understood the implications of calling a Black person a monkey and belonging in a zoo. But all that the student received as punishment was a 2-day expulsion because they said he was young and didn't understand what he was saying. He was 15. I'm pretty sure he understood what he was saying. So I was British, but I was also Black, so I didn't fit in. I have Ghanaian parents, but whenever I go to Ghana, I'm told that I sound like a white girl, and therefore I was not really Ghanaian. I was Black, but I was British, so I don't fit in. Then I came to the US to further my education in 2011 and have been constantly asked, what is your ethnicity? Or told, you're not Black, you don't sound Black, whatever that means. That has implications in and of itself. Or my personal favorite, but you don't look like the Queen. I was Black, but not African-American, so I did not fit in. Being a Black Brit in the US made me grapple with defining of self and what I had to offer and learn from the academy and as a scholar. Being a Black immigrant in US classrooms has been an eye-opening experience of how little we understand people or how heavily we like to place labels on people. It has been astounding how my British accent has played such a huge part of my role as researcher, teacher, and professor. This is a daily discussion. I still use many phrases and spellings that are British, as well as the fact that I just pronounce words differently. And as a literacy professor and English teacher, I have quickly found that my accent comes with a plethora of assumptions and disqualifications. When I talk about my Ghanaian heritage, people immediately ask me what I think of Africa as a whole, or tell me that they have been to Kenya, as though the two are somehow the same. Many have a single story of Ghana and Blackness, as Chimamanda Adichie discusses in her TED Talk. Despite these complexities, I thrive on the fact that my unique voice, literally and figuratively, experiences and global perspectives mean I do have something important to share. Essentially, what I initially saw as a deficit, I've utilized to expand on people's understanding on global matters, the complexities of being Black, and the many different types of Blackness. When Americans hear that I'm from England, many begin to speak in a British accent or bring out their British phrases. This is particularly interesting because it reveals that they have a small understanding of the UK, which I'm fine about. And actually, honestly, if we're friends and acquaintances, I find it, fun. But they're not aware of the fact that there's over 20 regional dialects with phrases that are specific to each dialect, which again is also fine. Many Americans have said that they're not even able to distinguish between different accents, but are able to hear their own differences. Yes, lorry, truck, absolutely. My husband loves saying that. Many Americans have said that they claim that they do not have accents, which is hilarious to me. Or they'll say, oh, you have an accent. And I'm like, so do you? They're like, I do. And I'm like, yes, there's 196 countries and not any of them are Americans. There's just one America. So everyone has a different accent. So yes, you have an accent. So does every other country. I find it fascinating that people build a whole life and understanding of who I am whenever I tell them I'm British. When I share stories of struggle and hardship in the UK, people do not believe me. They think I should be living like the Queen in abject luxury and opulence with my little corgis by my side. I have a Labrador, not quite a corgi. He's really basic, but it's fine. When I tell them I lived in what would be considered the British version of the projects, they are aghast. I will admit I play into the game of trying terribly hard to be placed. As I mentioned, it impacts one's sense of identity. Because language is so inextricably linked with identity, I often fear losing my identity, especially as Americans often remind me repeatedly, don't lose your accent, it makes you special. I kid you not, I've had a couple of people tell me this. If this is the case for an accent that has been elevated in American culture, then this means the same must be true of accents that do not hold the same value in the imaginations of Americans. And I say Americans because this is the context in which I am talking about, in which I'm currently placed. Part of this needing to be placed stems from the false notion that in this space, the only thing that makes me special is my accent, not me or my person, my accent. Something that I'm not, but I still happen to have. So if I lose it, what does that do? Where does that place me? What space do I now belong in or to?
Like you all know, like we've been saying, I'm an immigrant, naturalized American. I carry two passports. I carry the American passport and the Nigerian passport. I came to the United States because I won the visa immigration lottery, which Nigeria is banned from now. I've been resident here since the year 2000. However, I was brought up steeped in the oral traditions of my people. And I remember in my growing up days, we didn't have TV, in those days, and we would sit under the stars in the courtyard with my dad. He had this African hammock that he would sit on, and with children and the other siblings or the other cousins that live with us, we would gather around my father, and my mom would be cooking on the wood stove, in the backyard, and we would listen to stories. It was in those instances that my father told us stories about our traditions, folklores and stories, and the proverbs. He shared all of those. I have those fond memories of all of those wise sayings of my people, and even the history of my people. And my parents were educated. My mother was a teacher, but that was the oral tradition, that I was steeped in and that I still hold very sacrosanct. And so for me, it's crucial to share, to stay true to my birth place, which is Nigeria, and the burial place, of course, of my ancestors. But at the same time, too, I also need to find that intricate balance to honor this country of my sojourn, right, which is the birthplace of my children. And that's the reason why I do prefer to be referred to as a Nigerian American and not as an African American. Not because I do not, I admire the tenacity and the grit of the African American spirit, but that's just not who I am. I'm a Nigerian American because I have a different set of experiences, a different set of where I'm coming from, identity, from the African American identity. And so that is it. As a transplanted American, I want to be identified both as a Nigerian, as an American, because this is essential to my own identity. And being a transplant has not been without its challenges. There's the tidal waves of, like homesickness. Sometimes just seeing a picture of a bush, like a bush that I can recognize near my father's house. Maybe somebody sent a picture of somebody that went home and I just see like the banana trees or the plantain tree. It just hits me, that nostalgia just hits me so much, and there's that challenge, right? And also too, there's the challenge of, being the outsider standing on the fringes and on the wings of goings on. You're looking inside from outside. And sometimes, a lot of times you're wondering, when am I ever going to fit it, into the different things, into this society, and this is on so many levels. Sometimes it's on the level of not being able to, when people make certain references that I don't have a frame of reference to, I feel like an outsider, not because of what they said, not because of how they said it, but just because we just don't have, I just have a different identity, and I don't have that connection to that history, to that story, to that cultural practice that those people have, and that keeps me as an outsider. And also too, is the feeling that you get when people show surprise by the level of your professional prowess. When people convey the impression that whatever position that I've attained here, is only because of affirmative action. For example, is the feeling that I get when I know people think, or sometimes people convey that I don't deserve to be where I am, and I shouldn't be complaining about it. And so sometimes you wonder, okay, do I keep quiet because of this? And it's like you need to be grateful, that at least you have that. And if you're not satisfied with that, you can go back to where you came from, And these are the things that I personally grapple with, as an immigrant. And being winning the visa lottery was my professional qualification back in Nigeria had a lot of impact in my winning this, or being approved for. I played the lottery and I won it, but then being approved for it, my professional qualification played a big part in it, because it was in the during the movement of the brain drain, which is still going on, right? But then I knew that coming in here, I had to take several steps backwards, in order to fit in. But for me, it was just that I never was prepared for how long it would take to be accepted, how equivocal my professional acceptance into society would be. And so even though I understand the human need for connectedness that prompts people to ask, where are you from? Just like Melissa has shared earlier on, it often quickly becomes disconcerting for me when, as a conversation starter, people say, wow, you have an accent. Where are you from? And so see, mine is different from Melissa, because Melissa's accent, British accent, is glorified, right? It's glorified to a larger extent. But for me, with an American accent, when people say, where are you from? My first reaction is, because there's a negative, just like she implied earlier on, there's often a negative association there's a negative connotation that's associated with the kind of accent that I carry. And so even when people ask that, whether they know this or not, I often freeze up at I go to that fight mode, like, okay, so what are you trying to say? And I get defensive, and because I constantly feel like I have to justify who I am, the essence of my being, and by just this seemingly simple question. And then a similar, less frustrating, but equally upsetting version of the Q&A session sometimes goes like this. When did you come to the United States? And I said, so number of years. They said, wow, so how did you learn to speak English so well if you've just been here for so number of years? And so I now have to explain the process of colonization and all of that, which sometimes is painful, especially when you see like our history, country history, and the way that things still are in most of the African nations, in terms of colonization. And a lot of times I see that, equally offensive questions like Melissa was sharing, where people say, do you have cars in Africa? I've been asked, do you live in trees? Do you live in trees? And in those days, I was a lot younger and a lot fairer than this. And I would say, well, do you live in trees here? Do you live in trees here in the United States? If you do, then we live in trees back in Africa or in Nigeria. And so as a professor, though, I've come to the conclusion that the best way to create a space for myself is to confront this issue as I first introduce myself to my students. And my line often goes like this. When I come to classes, like, my name is Dr. Adeneko. You can tell by my name and the way that I speak that I'm not from here. So let me tell you something. This accent is not going anywhere. You're going to have to get used to it. If I say something that you don't understand, please tell me to repeat myself. And I'll be so glad to repeat myself or to write it on the board, because to me, you also have an accent. And usually when I do that, there's like this awkward giggles and, people giggle awkwardly, and then the sigh of relief because I've addressed that elephant in the room. So that's really my own experience, which is slightly different in some ways, same, but different from Melissa's experience.
So we've mentioned in our title that Blackness is not monolithic, and we've, as Bissy just said, same, but different. We found that we use storytelling, therefore, as a means to further our students' learning, but also create a space for ourselves. This is important to us, and we are not apologetic for it, but because we feel people need to understand the intricacies of Blackness, so why not include this in our daily praxis? But even within our storytelling, there are differences. Blackness is not monolithic after all, and neither are our storytelling practices. This is of great import. Despite our similarities of being Black immigrants, we also have different things we want to get across in the classrooms. There are similarities in our aims and goals, of course, but how we take this up is varied based on our individuality and personal preferences. What we did just now is what we do in our classrooms, sometimes literally a whole story about us, but more often than not, it is interspersed with or prompted by questions our students ask us or to illustrate a point we're trying to make.
So for me, I use storytelling to demonstrate joint writing experience or exercise in my class, or as a tool to compare and contrast with widely held beliefs that need to be reevaluated or challenged.
And I use storytelling as writing prompts. I often write about my life experiences as different characters. Sometimes I don't even tell them that I wrote it myself for the students to analyze and discuss. Other times I use it to dismantle stereotypes, address or probe critical thinking in my students, especially when they have said something that does not sound inclusive or is very insular. We're going to skip a couple of slides because we're aware of time, and we do want to get to an activity for you towards the end. So Bissy, if we want to get to maybe the global and local connections. So what slide is that one?
14.
Pardon?
14.
Okay. So there was a time that I actually, with my students, I had a research project that I did with, I don't know if everyone's heard of Alfred Tatum. It was a writing project, but this was actually so we actually had to do this in practice. This is also with younger students, where basically the genesis of me realizing, oh, storytelling is actually powerful for me. When I realized, oh wait, these students want to hear my story, because I was like, wait, hold on. They have no idea where my accent is from. They're wondering who on earth I am. I was really genuinely worried that they wouldn't relate to me, because it was the first time I was actually going into CPS classrooms, Black boys, and I thought they were going to think I was a white woman. Like literally, they would, because I had people literally ask me, what's your ethnicity? Even though they saw me as a dark-skinned Black woman, they were asking me what's my ethnicity because of my accent. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't teach Black boys, because they're going to think, what is this? What's going on here? And so this is when I first realized, okay, maybe I need to actually tell my story. This is going to be a powerful tool. And so when I started to actually use storytelling in my classrooms, I realized that the boys started to, it caused them to have a relationship to themselves and the world. And so they started to see themselves in relationship to the world. So I realized I was actually a bridge to the local and the global. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. I didn't realize I could do this. And so I realized then that it wasn't just about telling my story, it was also expanding their understanding of how they're positioned in the world locally, but also globally. And so that from our work, it wasn't just about telling our stories and also helping them understand Blackness, it was also helping our students writ large understand their positioning in the world and positioning in society. And so I think when we started to realize the power of storytelling, not just for literacy practices and our general praxis, but also being a bridge to an access to global matters, I think that's when we realize, oh, there's power to our storytelling. It's not just two African immigrants sitting here telling stories, sitting here, rocking around a fire, telling stories, and and this is actually a pedagogical practice that actually has power behind it and can help students really have a powerful not just in-class experience, but a sustaining lifelong lesson learned. Because we have followed up with some of these students and they have started to really see themselves as more agentic beings. Just by us telling our stories. When I started to tell them that, oh, my version, I lived in the projects in England, they're like, whoa, their minds were so blown because they just couldn't see anything or anyone else outside of them who looked like them, who lived similar lives in a different space. It blew their minds, essentially, that someone who sounds different, who looks different, who they expected to live completely different, actually had the same kind of life, but just transposed elsewhere, but also now has managed to transcend what they didn't think they could transcend. And so it was just something that also helped them realize, okay, this is how I've been positioned in society, but I can actually live a different life somehow. And so just little anecdotes like that. We can't get through everything that we wanted to get through today, but we did have basically some themes that we saw that it raised their critical consciousness. It helped them get through the globe, help them understand global and local matters, but it also helped them appreciate the wealth of knowledge that we had as instructors and not just understand us as this quasi-Blackness or this, are you just African-Americans, but also African-Americans with just random accents. It helped them to understand that, oh wait, Blackness isn't just this monolithic thing. I mean, it is actually, there's a difference to it. And in doing so, they helped them understand and reflect on their own identities as well, whatever race they were. So this wasn't just for Black students, this was for students across all races. It helped them understand the nuances to their own identities as well. The fact that some of them were like, oh, I don't have a culture. I'm like, no, everyone has a culture. Everyone has a nuanced culture. I said, do you eat dinner with your family every day? That's the family culture that you have right there. And so now let's broaden that. Let's work from that and let's broaden it. What else do you do? And so I think just by telling our stories and really being open with who we are and expressing that, I mean, it's a sensitive subject for some people, and some people don't want to engage in this kind of conversation, but we're like, well, we're going to have that conversation. There's no two ways about it. We have to be comfortable with ourselves in the classroom. So us being comfortable with ourselves in the classroom will actually give you a better instruction and actually help you become better students and actually have better literacy and English practices. So let's have these conversations. So with that being said, can you go to the slide with the Padlet? Okay, so we wanted you to get to this Padlet. Can you click on that link and put it into the chat box? Copy and paste and put it in the chat for me. And then go back to the slide. So the slide has questions for you. So you can answer any of those questions. So basically, we want you to think about what part of your identity is important to you with your instruction, research, or scholarship. Where are you from and how does this impact your instruction? Because we all have some sort of positioning, whether we're aware of it or not, that impacts our instruction. And how are you positioned in the classroom based on aspects of your identity? So Bissy, if you can also copy and paste that slide, the instructions are put in the chat box.
Give me a second. Give me a second.
Sure. Does everyone know how to use a Padlet? No, you don't have to log in or sign up. You just basically press the plus sign that's at the bottom right-hand corner. And once you press it, oh, you stop sharing?
Yeah, give me a second. I'm trying to get back to the trying to get back to where we were. Sorry, everyone. Just
I like it.
Uh-oh. All right, I'll just leave it on here. If we all have the link to, since we all have the link to the Padlet.
You don't have to log in. You just click the plus sign. And just a quick, what part of your identity is important to you when you're teaching? Just jot down a couple of points, 2 or 3 points. I'm gonna try and copy and paste this. One second. I've got it. Okay, the instructions in the chat box. You can choose any of those questions to answer. Okay, thank you for anonymous. Where I'm from, impacts, moved from small town to big city during, thank you. My professional as a licensed therapist and as a community college graduate, thank you. And then once you've posted, feel free to comment on somebody else's post. All of it. Charles said all of it. Ah. Okay, thank you.
Mm.
You guys are quick, thanks. All right, excellent.
How do we submit once we've typed the thing?
It should just submit once you just press enter.
Maybe a publish button.
Ah,
Is it-
there it is. Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
No problem. Oh, good. Someone's already commented somebody else's. So someone wrote my identity. Oh, okay. Oh, someone color of theirs. They were being fancy. So anyone would like to share in the last 4 minutes that we have? Anything? We've got someone from Long Island. Huh. And, someone from STEM. Yep, the sexism in STEM is very salient and prevalent. So give yourself some time to read each other's and maybe respond to each other's. Charles, would you like to comment on yours?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, did you say me comment on my own or just kind of expand on it?
Either or.
Oh, yeah. I have students, some of them from Mexico, and when I'm teaching words, I mention how it might be from Latin. And then I even show them this little clip here. I don't think you can read it, but it says in August 2555 BC, Roman forces under Julius Caesar invaded Britain. So this language that we're typing, it's Latin, which came from Greek, and the tea we drink is from China. And there's just the world is full of different cultures, and you take the good and you leave the bad. And I think there's just so much richness, like you said, in culture. I even asked them, do you sit with your family when you eat? There's like 2 students out of 20 that sit together at a table and eat together. There's just so much. And I even, there's an African student, I asked her, how's the fruit in America? And she laughed. I don't know if Ola BC is laughing about the fruit.
Mangoes are so sour here. Pineapples are so sour. They're not sweet. Sorry. It's different.
What about the person who said STEM? Or anyone else who would like to share before we close out?
Oh, that was me, I believe, about I think that it just makes you more open to other people's experiences when you have experienced it yourself. And while being a woman in STEM is not the same as being Black in America or any of these other things, it does make you more open, I believe, to listening and respecting the opinions and the experiences of other people.
Absolutely. Thank you. One last person. Anyone like to share what they wrote? This was great. I love people who are educators and in academia. You guys always do the best work. One last person.
I'm the one from Long Island, the green one. And something I've noticed is it's on a much smaller scale than anything you've described, but I grew the Northeast and like the Long Island, New York City, like North Shore of Long Island culture is, I mean, even just speaking right now, I hear how my accent has flattened. And when I go home, my friends I've grown up with and my family say that I sound weird. And here, my husband, who's from Illinois, and friends who I meet think that I sound weird. And so when you explained that when you go to different places where you've lived throughout your life and you don't feel like you fit, I identify with that. I feel that for you because, and how that comes into my classroom is that I understand that the world is bigger than myself. And when you were talking about who am I and how I'm losing my identity with my language, I think that a lot of our students are having those similar experiences, whether they've been relocated very short distances or whether they've been relocated very far away from where they may have been from when they were young. And I don't think it's bad. I just think that it's only now being talked about and becoming more and more common that we are global citizens. And when you realize your own global citizenship, you start to recognize others' global citizenship, and those communities they expand. And as they expand, in a way, they grow smaller. And I really appreciate you highlighting that kind of little internal identity crisis that you experience day to day based on what you look like or what you sound like or where you are when you are speaking and how people perceive you. That was a very valuable story that you told for me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, we don't want to take too much of your time, so we really appreciate everyone sharing and getting involved and participating. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for having me at ECC. It really has been an enjoyable experience.
And we just wanted to remind each and every one of you, and this is our personal mantra by Naria Rahid, that detail of yourself that you want to throw away, hold on to it. It will make sense one day. This is what we hold on to for ourselves as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right.